My name is Helena. I'm 67 years old, and I died for exactly 11 minutes. I know it sounds impossible to be here telling this story, but that's exactly what happened. 11 minutes without a heartbeat, without breathing, without any sign of life. 11 minutes during which doctors did everything to bring me back. And when I finally returned, I was no longer the same person because I saw things no one should see yet. Because I understood truths I had spent my entire life ignoring. But before I talk about that night, I need to tell you about the damned habit that led me there. For over 40 years, every single day, I did the same thing before going to bed. It seemed so harmless, so normal, so much a part of my routine that I never, not for a second, imagined it could kill me. It was just one cigarette, a single cigarette before lying down. My relaxation moment, I used to say. My husband complained. My children begged me to stop, but I always laughed and said it was just one, that it didn't hurt, that I had everything under control. I started when I was 25, newly married, stressed with work and the adult life that had just begun. A colleague offered me a cigarette during a particularly difficult break, and I accepted. Not to become a smoker, I thought, just to ease that moment. But that cigarette brought such immediate relief, so comforting, that the next day I wanted another and another and another. Over time, I managed to reduce it to just one a day. I thought that was a victory. One cigarette, always at night, always at the same time, always with the same excuse. After a long day, I deserved this moment for myself. I didn't even consider it a real addiction. After all, it wasn't a pack a day. It was just one. A small ritual. A harmless habit. The years passed. My children grew up and left home. My husband retired. I also stopped working. Life became calmer, quieter, but the cigarette remained there, a faithful companion every night. Sometimes I coughed a little in the morning, nothing serious. Sometimes I felt tightness in my chest, but I attributed it to age, stress, anything other than that single cigarette I religiously lit before bed. I remember my daughter's wedding 10 years ago. She looked so beautiful in her white dress, walking down the aisle toward her future. I was crying with joy, sitting in the front row, when I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. I rubbed it discreetly, not wanting to draw attention, not wanting to ruin her perfect day. The pain passed after a few minutes, and I convinced myself it was just emotion. Just the overwhelming feeling of seeing my baby girl getting married. That night, after the reception, I went to the hotel balcony and lit my cigarette. My husband found me there, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "Helena," he said softly, "you scared me today. In the church, I saw your face. That wasn't just emotion, was it?" I lied to him. I told him it was nothing, just the excitement of the day. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, but he didn't push. He just kissed my forehead and went back inside. And I stood there, smoking my cigarette, convincing myself that I was fine, that it was just one cigarette, that I had everything under control. The warnings continued over the years. Small episodes that I dismissed, ignored, rationalized away. A sharp pain while gardening that made me stop and catch my breath. Waking up in the middle of the night with my heart racing for no apparent reason. My doctor mentioning elevated cholesterol and blood pressure, suggesting I should really consider quitting smoking. "Even just one a day adds up over 40 years, she said gently. Your cardiovascular system is showing signs of significant stress." I nodded, promised I would think about it, and went home and lit my cigarette that night, just like always. It was on a Tuesday, a completely ordinary day. I woke up, had breakfast, did the housework, talked to my friend Margaret on the phone about her grandson's upcoming baptism. I prepared dinner chicken with roasted vegetables, my husband's favorite. We ate together, watched the news, complained about politics like we always did, everything absolutely normal. My husband settled into his recliner to watch a documentary about World War II. His latest obsession when I stood up and said I was going to get some fresh air. Don't be long, he said, without looking away from the screen. It's getting cold out there. I grabbed my pack of cigarettes from the drawer where I kept them hidden, even though my husband knew exactly where they were. I went to the backyard, to the small corner near the garden shed where I always smoked. The evening air was cool, crisp, perfect. Stars were starting to appear in the darkening sky. I lit my cigarette, took the first drag, and felt that familiar relief coursing through my body. That moment of relaxation I had convinced myself I needed, that I deserved. Then everything changed. A sharp pain exploded in my chest. Not the mild discomfort I sometimes felt, but something violent, devastating, as if someone had thrust a burning knife directly into my heart. The cigarette fell from my hand, landing on the ground where it continued to burn, a small orange glow in the gathering darkness. I tried to call for my husband, but no sound came out. My throat had closed completely. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but feel this overwhelming, crushing agony radiating from my chest down my left arm, up into my jaw. I remember thinking with absolute clarity, this is it. This is how I die. Alone in the backyard with a cigarette at my feet. My legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the cold ground. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was that cigarette still burning a few inches from my face, mocking me with its innocent appearance. Just one cigarette, just a harmless habit. I don't know how long I was unconscious before my husband found me. He told me later that he had gotten up to ask if I wanted tea, noticed I wasn't in the backyard anymore, and came looking. He found me lying motionless on the ground, my lips already turning blue. No pulse, not breathing. He screamed my name, shook me, and when I didn't respond, he ran inside to call emergency services while beginning CPR. But I wasn't there for any of that. I was already far away. I heard my husband's distant voice calling my name. I felt his hands shaking me, his desperate voice calling for help. But I was already floating above the scene. I know how that sounds. I know people will say it was lack of oxygen in the brain, hallucinations, neurons firing randomly in their death throes. But I know what I experienced, and it was more real than anything I've ever felt in my entire life. I floated above my body. I could see everything with perfect clarity, even though it was dark. I saw my husband kneeling beside me, the phone pressed to his ear, his voice breaking as he shouted our address to the emergency operator. I saw him pumping my chest desperately, trying to remember the CPR training he had taken years ago. I saw tears streaming down his face. I saw my lifeless body on the ground, my skin already taking on a grayish tone, my eyes half open and unseeing. And what terrified me most wasn't seeing myself dead. It was realizing that I felt nothing. No pain, no fear, just a strange emptiness. Then I was pulled. There's no other way to describe it. Something pulled me away from that scene, away from my house, away from everything I knew. I moved through a darkness that wasn't exactly dark. It was more like an absence of everything. No light, no sound, no sensation. Just me and that terrifying void. And then I heard the voices. They weren't normal voices. They were more like whispers echoing from every direction at once, speaking in a language I didn't understand but somehow comprehended perfectly. They said things about my life, about the choices I had made, about the time I had wasted, about the people I had hurt without realizing, about all the small lies I had told myself. It's just one cigarette, they repeated mockingly, using my own voice, my own inflections. It doesn't hurt. I have control. I deserve this moment. After a long day, I've earned it. Each excuse I had made over the years was thrown back at me, and with each one, I felt a shame so deep, so absolute, that I wanted to disappear completely. But the worst part wasn't the shame. It was what came next. I saw my funeral. I saw it as clearly as if I were actually there, standing in the corner of the church, watching. My children were in the front row. my daughter sobbing uncontrollably, my son trying to be strong but failing, his shoulders shaking with grief. My husband sat between them, looking 20 years older than he had an hour ago, staring at my casket with empty eyes. My grandchildren were confused, holding their parents' hands, not understanding why everyone was so sad, why Grandma was sleeping in that box and wouldn't wake up. The priest was saying something about how I had lived a good life, how I was at peace now, but I could see the truth in everyone's faces. I hadn't lived long enough, I had left too soon, and they all knew why. They all knew about the cigarette, the small, harmless habit that had killed me. Then the scene shifted, and I saw something that broke me completely. I saw what my life could have been if I had stopped. I saw myself at 80, healthy and vibrant, playing with my great-grandchildren in the same backyard where I had just died. I saw my husband and me traveling to Ireland, a trip we had been planning for years but kept postponing. I saw us walking hand in hand through rolling green hills, laughing like we were young again. I saw my daughter's second wedding. She would remarry after her first husband's death. I somehow knew, and I was there beside her, helping her get ready, wiping away happy tears. I saw my grandson's graduation from medical school. I saw him accepting his diploma and looking into the crowd, finding me, smiling that bright smile that reminded me so much of his father. I saw Christmases and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday dinners that were extraordinary simply because I was there. I was alive, I was present, and then I saw the reality, the version where I wasn't there. My daughter getting married again without me, my grandson graduating and looking into the crowd for a grandmother who wasn't there anymore. My husband alone in our house, eating dinner by himself, sleeping in a bed that was too big, growing old without his partner. I saw him in our backyard, standing in the exact spot where I had died, staring at the ground with that same empty expression from the funeral. He stood there for long minutes, and then he whispered, "Why couldn't you just stop? It was just cigarettes, Helena, just cigarettes, and now you're gone. Please," I begged to the void, to the voices, to whatever force was showing me these things. "Please, let me go back. I'll change. I promise I'll change. I'll never touch another cigarette. I'll do anything. Please don't let this be the end." The voices laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but something sadder, more resigned. "Everyone says that," they whispered. "Everyone promises to change when they're facing the end. But few really do. Few have the strength." "I will," I sobbed, even though I had nobody to cry with. "I swear I will. Just give me another chance, please." The darkness began to press in on me, heavy and suffocating. I felt myself being pulled deeper, away from everything, away from everyone. This was it. This was really the end. I had wasted my second half of life on a habit I thought was harmless, and now I was paying the ultimate price. Then, suddenly, I was being pulled in the opposite direction, back toward light, back toward sound, back toward pain. Suddenly, I was back in my body. But it wasn't a gentle return. It was violent, brutal, as if I were being forced back into a space too small to contain me. I felt every fiber of my body screaming in protest. My lungs burned as air was forced into them by the paramedics' resuscitation bag. My heart was beating erratically, struggling to find its rhythm again, shocked back to life by the defibrillator paddles. My chest ached from the compressions. I would later learn that 2 of my ribs had been cracked from the force of the CPR. I heard the paramedics' voices as if from underwater. "We got her back. She's back. Heart rhythm stabilizing." I opened my eyes and saw bright lights above me, moving rapidly. I was in the ambulance. Concerned faces looked down at me. Hands worked quickly on my body, inserting IVs, attaching monitors, calling out numbers I didn't understand. I tried to speak, but I had a tube in my throat. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't obey. Straps held me down to the gurney. One of the paramedics, a young woman with kind eyes, leaned over me. Helena, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. I managed to move my finger slightly. She smiled. Good. You're going to be okay. We're taking you to the hospital. Your husband is following in another vehicle. Just stay with us. Okay. They told me later that I'd been clinically dead for 11 minutes, that I had suffered a massive heart attack caused by decades of damage to my cardiovascular system, that if my husband hadn't found me so quickly, if he hadn't started CPR immediately, if the ambulance hadn't arrived within 8 minutes, I wouldn't be here today. The cardiologist said it was a miracle I survived, and an even bigger miracle that I had no brain damage despite being without oxygen for so long. But I already knew all that. I had seen it in that dark place. I had felt it in every whisper. The next hours were a blur of emergency procedures. They rushed me into surgery to place stents in my blocked arteries. I woke up in the ICU, tubes and wires everywhere, machines beeping steadily. My husband was sitting beside the bed, holding my hand, looking like he had aged 10 years in one night. When he saw my eyes open, he started crying. I thought I lost you, he said, his voice breaking. Helena, you died. Your heart stopped. They brought you back, but you were gone. You were really gone. I couldn't speak yet, still had the ventilator tube, but I squeezed his hand. I wanted to tell him everything I had seen, everything I had learned, but the words would have to wait. The recovery was long and painful. Weeks in the hospital. Daily visits from cardiologists, nurses, physical therapists, learning to walk again without getting dizzy, learning to breathe without pain, months of cardiac rehabilitation, pills that I would have to take for the rest of my life, blood thinners, beta blockers, cholesterol medication, aspirin. My daily pill organizer looked like a pharmacist's inventory, but none of that compared to the psychological recovery. The nightmares where I was back in that darkness, hearing those voices. The panic attacks when I thought about how close I had come to losing everything. The overwhelming guilt when I looked at my husband's face and saw the trauma I had put him through. My daughter came to visit every day. She brought my grandchildren once I was strong enough. My grandson, 8 years old, climbed carefully onto the hospital bed and hugged me gently. Grandma, Daddy said you're sick because of cigarettes. Is that true? I looked at my daughter, then at my son who was standing in the doorway, then back at my grandson's innocent face. Yes, sweetie, that's true. But cigarettes are bad. They teach us that in school. Why did you smoke them? Out of the mouths of babes. How could I explain 40 years of addiction and self-deception to an 8-year-old? Because Grandma made a mistake, I said finally. A big mistake. But I'm never going to make it again. He seemed satisfied with that answer. Good, because I want you at my birthday party next month. You promised to make your special cookies. I'll be there, I promised. I'll be there for all your birthdays. When they left, I cried. I cried for all the birthdays I had almost missed, for the trauma I had caused my family, for the 40 years I had wasted on a habit that had nearly killed me. My husband asked me, once I was moved out of intensive care and could talk normally, if I wanted a cigarette. He said it with such sadness in his voice, as if he already knew what my answer would be, as if he had already resigned himself to watching me continue destroying myself, unable to stop me. No, I said. And it was the easiest word I've ever spoken in my life. Never again. He cried. He actually cried right there in the hospital room, holding my hand. I thought I was going to lose you, he sobbed. I thought that cigarette had finally won. I thought after 40 years, I was going to have to bury my wife because of something so stupid, so preventable. It almost did win, I admitted. But I saw things, Robert. When I was dead, I saw things. I saw our future without me. I saw you alone. I saw our children grieving. I saw everything I would miss. And I can't do that to you, to them, to myself, not for anything. The first few weeks after coming home were hell, not because of the physical withdrawal, though that was difficult, but because every night at exactly the same time I used to light my cigarette, I felt an almost unbearable urge. My body remembered, my mind remembered. 40 years of habit don't disappear overnight. I would find myself standing up automatically at 9:47 p.m., my hand reaching for the drawer where I used to keep my cigarettes. Before I remembered. Before I caught myself, my husband removed every cigarette from the house, every lighter, every ashtray. He even repainted the corner of the backyard where I used to smoke, planted new flowers there, put up a small bench, transforming the place where I had died into something beautiful and new. But even without the physical cigarettes, the craving was there. It was psychological. It was 40 years of neural pathways. It was muscle memory. It was a ghost of a habit that had defined almost 2/3 of my life. But every time the urge came, I remembered. I remembered the pain in my chest. I remembered the darkness. I remembered the voices mocking me with my own excuses. I remembered my daughter's wedding that I would have missed if I had died then. I remembered my grandson's face asking why I had smoked when cigarettes were bad, and the urge passed. It's been 2 years since that night. 2 years since I died and came back. 2 years since I had my last cigarette. And I'm still here. I saw my grandson's 9th and 10th birthdays. I made those special cookies I promised. I traveled to Ireland with my husband. We finally took that trip, and it was everything we dreamed it would be. I saw my daughter get a promotion at work. I held my newborn granddaughter, my son's second child, and cried happy tears. People ask me what it was like to die. They want to hear about a white light, about seeing deceased relatives waiting to welcome me with open arms, about feeling peace and love. But that's not what I experienced. What I experienced was the devastating truth of how we deceive ourselves, how we convince ourselves that our small destructive habits are harmless, how we ignore all the warnings until it's too late. That harmless cigarette almost cost me everything. It almost cost me the opportunity to see my children grow older. It almost cost me the chance to meet my granddaughter. It almost cost me Ireland with my husband. It almost cost me every tomorrow I still have to live. If I could go back and talk to my 5-year-old self, accepting that first cigarette from my colleague, I would grab her shoulders and say, "Don't do it." That one cigarette will become 2, then 10, then 40 years of one cigarette every night. Those 40 years will become blocked arteries and a damaged heart. They'll become 11 minutes of death on a cold backyard ground. And if you're lucky enough to come back, you'll spend the rest of your life dealing with the consequences, taking pills, living with the knowledge that you did this to yourself. But I can't go back. None of us can. All we have is now, this moment, this choice. The choice to continue our destructive habits or to stop before they destroy us. I'm sharing this story not to scare anyone, although I hope it does, a little. Fear kept me away from cigarettes when willpower might have failed. I'm sharing because I know there are people out there with their own harmless habits. Maybe it's not cigarettes, maybe it's drinking a little too much every night. Maybe it's avoiding exercise because there's always tomorrow. Maybe it's eating in ways you know are unhealthy, but telling yourself it's fine, you'll start eating better next week. Maybe it's ignoring warning signs from your body because it's probably nothing. I'm here to tell you it's not nothing. That small habit you think is under control, that you've convinced yourself is harmless, could be the thing that takes everything from you. And you won't realize it until it's too late, until you're lying on the ground, unable to breathe, watching your life slip away, making promises to change that you might never get the chance to keep. I was one of the lucky ones. I got a second chance. I died for 11 minutes and came back to tell the story. But not everyone gets that chance. Not everyone comes back. The cemetery is full of people who thought they had more time, who thought their habits were under control, who thought it wouldn't happen to them. So please, listen to what I'm telling you. Look at your life. Look at your habits honestly. Look at the small lies you tell yourself every day to justify behaviors you know are harmful. And ask yourself, is it really worth it? Is that momentary pleasure, that brief relief, worth potentially losing everything? Because I can tell you from experience, from someone who died and came back, it's not. It absolutely is not. Nothing is worth missing your daughter's future wedding. Nothing is worth not meeting your grandchildren. Nothing is worth dying alone on cold ground with a cigarette mocking you at your feet. My name is Helena. I'm 67 years old. I died for exactly 11 minutes because of a habit I thought was harmless. And if this story saves even one person from making the same mistake, then those 11 minutes of darkness, those 11 minutes of absolute terror, those 11 minutes that my husband spent desperately trying to bring me back will have been worth it. Don't wait for your last night to realize that small habits can have devastating consequences. Don't wait to die to start truly living, because second chances are not guaranteed. I got mine through a combination of luck, my husband's quick actions, and skilled paramedics. You might not get yours. Change now while you still can, while you still have tomorrows, while the people you love still have you. Don't let your story end the way mine almost did. Don't make them stand at your funeral talking about how you almost made it, how you were going to quit next week, how they wish they had tried harder to make you stop. Be the person who quits today. Be the person who chooses life over habit. Be the person who gets to grow old with their spouse, who gets to meet all their grandchildren, who gets to travel to Ireland and everywhere else they dreamed of going. Be the person who lives, really lives, not just exists around a habit that's slowly killing you. Because in the end, that's what it comes down to. Life or habit. You can't have both forever. Eventually, one will win. Make sure it's the right one.